99 round trips to China. And we had manufacturing in Florence and in Tuscany. So I'd have to go to Italy. And, it was great. I had the luck of working with some of the coolest people all over the world.
Hello. Welcome. It's been a while. I'm talking with Kimberli MacKay. I've probably known her 20 odd years now. She's a milliner, that's a hat maker, a seamstress, great cook, wonderful hostess, optimistic, and definitely a hard worker. I remember going to the Mermaid Parade with her in Coney Island when I got to New York, and boobs. Just remember a lot of boobs. I've been slacking on the podcasts. I've been busy. I need to be busy making some money, so So podcast is going to go down to once a month on like the last Wednesday, or maybe the second to last Wednesday of the month. I just had my dad here for 3 weeks over from Yorkshire. My mum died in February, not my birth mum, but she was like a mum in many ways. It's been 5 months and it changes you, death. You start to rethink about what's really important. You start thinking about health. She died of cancer. Within a block of where I live, my neighbor, like 2 houses down, Diane, her husband died of cancer. They have a teenage daughter. Then Paul, who lives right next to her, his dad died of cancer. So that's 3 out of 5 houses on my street, just my street, cancer. What's important to you? What haven't you done that you really want to? I mean, why wait, right? I also feel like we're being lied to on a lot of levels. I understand the distrust within the health industry, and I understand the distrust of the government. Lots of morally corrupt shit going on, people. Be good to each other, protect each other, do your own research. I'm getting a bit deep, but okay, that's enough of that. So this is my good friend Kimberli, not Kimberli, Kimberli MacKay. I hope you enjoy.
I do apologize. There may be some dog barking at some point. I'm in the solarium, which is glass seal, 3 glass walls, which is prime dog TV.
That's okay. Look at those gorgeous blue eyes of yours.
It's been a minute, my friend. You've got to find your way up to North Jersey and come enjoy the house by the lake.
Yeah, good for you.
The dock and everything. Look at this.
You are living the dream.
I am living the dream, baby.
Oh, yeah. Good for you. You bloody deserve it, love. So, welcome, Kimberli MacKay. Hello, my friend. I first met you in New York. You had a lovely Upper West Side apartment.
It was great.
It was. Did you have a backyard as well?
I had a 2-story duplex with a private garden, private backyard with an apple tree in the middle, and I built a deck around the apple tree and had all the gardens, and that's where we'd go to eat and party.
Yes, we had many parties there, and having a garden was very uncommon in Manhattan.
Very. Yeah, I was super lucky.
Absolutely. Good times, good conversation, good food too. I just remember your fashion background intrigued me, and you were always trotting off here, there, and everywhere.
I had factories in Taiwan, in China, in Italy, and I had offices for my salesmen all over the world. It got to the point where I didn't really get jet lag anymore too much. On the 3rd afternoon, I'd need about an hour to close my eyes. And it got to the point where my factories knew if they were on the 3rd afternoon, all of a sudden the lights would get turned off in the office. I would kick back for an hour. The lights would turn on and I was good for the rest of the trip. Yeah, I did 99 round trips to China. Hong Kong, China.
I'm not sure what went wrong.
Wow. Is that Alexa talking to you in the background?
It is, and I don't know why. She's not sure what went wrong. Neither am I.
Okay, watch your hands on that chair. I think I can hear your bracelets hitting the metal. So what were you doing? What were you doing traveling all over the world?
So I was designing and developing products that were sold internationally. It was headwear. So I'm a master milliner. And it was also garments, so coats and flip-flops and beachwear and things like that. And it was just some of the best times of my life. I'd be gone for a month or 2 months. We also did some production in India, so I ended up in India. And from there, I had to pop down and have a little vacation in Sri Lanka, which if you haven't been, you've got to go. It's fabulous. And we had manufacturing in Florence and in Tuscany, so I'd have to go to Italy. And it was great. I had the luck of working with some of the coolest people all over the world. I saw them more than I saw my family, because I would be there for weeks on end. Some years at the beginning, when we first started to move our manufacturing abroad, I would be there. The first year I was abroad 7 months of the year. And then it got less as the years went on. And then finally I was able to do it about 3 months a year total. I could get around, plus some trade shows. I would do trade shows in Birmingham. I would do trade shows in Barcelona, things like that.
Now,
So,
were you working with one company in particular that you traveled with, or were you like a representative for many?
I was the director of design for a company called Betmar, New York. So it was 2 collections I would do twice a year. I would do a spring, summer, and a fall, winter. And one was super fancy hats, like church hats and wedding hats and race hats to wear the races. And the other was, stuff you'd find in JCPenney or in Lord & Taylor, just basic winter hats, basic sun hats. And we would also do a lot of boutiques nationwide. The church hats, it was very interesting. I learned really quickly that in the South, especially, church hats, there is a file box in every millinery shop. And they list who has bought which hat so that no 2 people will wear the same hat to the same church. Isn't that great?
I love that.
And way back before I was even in this position, I was living in Poughkeepsie, New York, right during and after college. And I happened to live across from a Baptist church. And it was always so interesting because you would see the parade of people going to church in the morning. I would sit in my window at the top. I had a lovely seat and I would watch. And 5 minutes after the doors had closed, a fabulous woman would always show up with the biggest, boldest, loudest. So, the moment the doors opened, she was on stage, and I could see that she walked quite a distance before she was out of my purview. But, it was really cool to see sort of the culture that surrounded headwear.
Oh, she made her entrance.
Oh, yeah. And it was a different woman every week. I was like, how do you not have 2 show up in the same week? Do you draw straws? How do you know? So it was really cool.
What kind of hats do people wear to the races?
So they're typically large. Depending on the race, bigger is better, but usually quite large. Straw, cinnamon is like a woven straw that's see-through. Sometimes they are Swiss braid. So it's a braid that's been then sewn in circle until you get the right shape. Typically it's not wool because it's hot that time of year. You also have the little ones that you can sit on your head. Those are called fascinators. Yeah, we sold a lot of hats in England, in the UK in general. We sold them all across Europe. We sold them coast to coast in the US, South America, the Caribbean. Yeah, we blanketed the world. It was pretty great.
In the UK, yeah, you should not wear a fascinator to a funeral. That's a big no.
And, I felt very lucky because I was making something that people would wear for the best times in their life and the saddest times in their life. And very often, I was told later, I got some really lovely letters from people that the hat that they had worn to their family member's funeral, it made them feel safe. It made them feel protected. And it was something, if they really didn't want people looking at them, they could lower the brim. Sometimes hats were used to make you feel spectacular, and sometimes they were used to make you feel safe.
So I know you're from the Midwest originally. How did you even get into the fashion industry in New York?
So I'm from New Hampshire, from New England.
New England. Oh, I'm sorry. New England, darling.
New England. I'm from New Hampshire. Um, I started sewing when I was 3, and I apparently was hanging on my mother's legs saying, teach me how to use the machine. And so by 4, I was in a sewing machine. And I ended up loving it, making my clothes all through high school, making my prom dresses and that sort of thing. When I found out I could do that for a living, I could design things, I was like, that blew my mind. So I checked out a couple schools. I ended up going to Marist College, which is now Marist University, who they have a fabulous fashion school, like really good. I went down to Poughkeepsie and I started my career there. I have a bachelor's degree. I'm a couturier as well. So I can drape and pattern make and make all the garments. I still do some custom work for people. I have a few clients that knock on the door from time to time for gala events, and so I'll still make them garments. And it was wonderful. It was a good solid program. It was small classes, so I was able to really get great attention. And my teachers were fantastic. They always gave me great advice, and it was just a wonderful time. But it was interesting coming from New Hampshire. When I first went to go to college and I was applying for schools, I remember my guidance counselor was trying to convince me not to go away, not to go into fashion. What do you know about fashion? She was, oh, your mother will be very upset if you leave New Hampshire. And my mother is a very kind woman, very sort of quiet. She does not start conflict. And I know she had a rather rousing conversation with this woman telling her, don't you ever tell my daughter what she can and can't do. So, I know where I get some of that. She might be quiet, but I know she's got in there. She's like, no. Mm-mm. So apparently when I was in 8th grade, I went on a Girl Scout trip to New York City. And I came home and I said to my mom, I'm going to live there someday.
I remember walking down Fifth Avenue with you and looking at some of the windows you helped design.
Those were some of the best jobs I've ever had. I mean, the creativity that I was allotted was pretty great. I did a series of I did all the dressing for them. So I worked with an organization that was in Long Island City. And when you walked into this facility, it looked like an old warehouse, which it was. But when you walked in, it was totally Santa's Village. You saw woodworkers creating things. You saw sculptors creating things. The woman that I worked with, she would hand sculpt all the faces. And when you walked into her room where there was the characters, and it was animatronics that were put into them so they would move certain ways, you'd look up at the wall and it was just faces, limbs, bodies, torsos. It was just like, okay, I want that torso with that arm, with that head. It was so cool, kind of creepy, but in a cool way. And so they would send me, I would get animatronic characters shipped to me, or sometimes I'd go fill my car with them, and I would get a dossier of what the theme was, and they would sometimes send me little bits. So I would open a box of socks and realize I am going to make outfits out of these socks on these little characters. I also had the Geico Neanderthal commercials from a number of years back. I don't know if you ever saw them.
Yeah.
So I was sent one of the 3 wise men from Marshall Fields, who in my opinion was a strong resemblance to that character. And I had to remake the big giant red velvet robes that were going to go on these characters because they were 50 some odd years old and falling apart. And they were so creepy that I actually ended up putting a bag over its head, because at night I would walk by to go to the bathroom and it always made me jump. It was so creepy. But it was really neat jobs. I did Virginia and her brother Oliver for the Christmas windows in Macy's. And at one point I was tasked with dressing 16 Olivers. And so I had 16 Olivers on my work table, all dressed. None of them had heads but the first one, because they would only usually send me one head if I was making a hat or something. And I was teaching at a school at the time. I was teaching sewing and pattern making and the like. And I knew that they were going to be messengering me a box with some stuff in it. And so I got this box from the messenger, and my friend was so excited that I was working. And she's like, "Can I open it? Can I open it?" I said, "Sure." She opens it and screams. She's like, "Why didn't you tell me I was going to be pulling a head out of a box?" And I was like, "Because it's too fun. Why would I tell you? Why would I spoil this?" So that's the day that I got Oliver's head, so I could finish the job, because I had to make him a hat and that kind of stuff too. So it was really cool stuff.
So were you making 16 of the same outfits for this Oliver character?
So it was the same outfit, but they were all slightly different. So when you work with animatronics, it's not, they don't behave like a person, right? For instance, I was making an outfit for a Santa Claus in one of the Lord and Taylor Christmas windows. And he would move sort of this weird, jerky way side to side. And for some reason, it leaned a little bit forward when it did that. And I can't change any of the animatronics. I've got to dress them as they are. So when I first made the outfit and I plugged it in, it was just the muslin. I plugged it in, and every time he would go this way, the whole front of the bottom of his jacket would flash the audience. It would just lift straight up. So if you were to see the garments, sometimes they looked really funky shape until they were on, because they had to work with the animatronics, which was always a challenge, but a good challenge. It was fun. I would do that work in a heartbeat again. Fortunately, like flagship Lord and Taylor closed in Manhattan. So many of the Christmas windows that used to be done aren't done. I don't think they made it through COVID. It's a different world now. I don't know when the last time was that you were in New York, but it's a different world now.
Yeah,
it's a little bit different.
I was there a couple years ago. Yeah, everyone who's still in New York tells me the same thing. It's just, it's changed. Talk to me. I'm a complete novice seamstress. Is that PC still today? Seamstress.
Sewist is sometimes used. Seamstress. I am not a tailor.
What's the difference?
I'm not a tailor. A tailor is a different training. I honestly don't know exactly what the formal definition of a tailor is, because I know I'm not one.
But you can make anything.
I can sew anything, but I would not say that I'm a tailor. When you're making a tailored suit, there are a million layers of things that you put in, and it's all hand stitching. And I have done that. I can do that, but that is not my specialty per se. I am a couturier, so I drape. So I take a piece of fabric from the roll. I always start with a muslin. So a muslin would either be made from muslin or a fabric similar to the fabric that you're going to make the final garment out of. So if you're making a knit, you wouldn't do the test in a woven. So I get the measurements of my client. I either drape it or I pattern draft it. I get the full muslin together. I then take the muslin to do a fitting. And then I come home, make any adjustments in case there's a second fitting necessary. And at this point, I have my clients sign a subset of my contract that says they will be responsible for maintaining their weight until the event. I once had a client who went abroad for a few weeks prior to the event they were going to and gained 12 pounds. Yes, that was a rough one. But so then I make the garments, and I can take clients with me sometimes. One of the services that I do provide is if someone they want the full experience, then they'll come with me to Manhattan for the day, and we go through all the garment center and we find the fabrics that they want. And so they can have the experience of seeing what, the garment district is all about. And I have never had a client that looked at me after and said, "Oh, that was a waste of time." They're always fascinated by it. And then they know where the fabric came from. And, they have firsthand knowledge of the whole day. And I don't have to be running in, getting swatches coming out, having swatches mailed to me, seeing them. It speeds things up.
I love fabric shopping. I really do. I get so inspired. Do you use Mood a lot? You go in there quite a bit?
Mood is good. Mood has a really good selection. So they have a very vast selection. I have had highs and lows in that shop, mainly based on who the person I was working with within the shop. There are sometimes I go to do something and they're like, you can't do that. And I'm like, I can do that. No, you can't do that. I'm going to do that. So I would like to purchase this, please. And that's sort of frustrating because I know they're juniors in college telling me what I can and can't do. And I've been in the business for 40 years. And, I'm like, guys, don't tell me what I can and can't do. I really like, there's this wonderful shop it's actually not a fabric store. You lived in Manhattan for a while. When you would go into a hardware store in Manhattan, they were like this big. But anything you asked for, they'd be like, be right back. And they'd go into whatever catacombs and they'd be like, here's the toilet you wanted, or, here's the 3 screws you needed, or whatever it was. So there's a store like that in the garment center called Steinhoff and Stoller, which is like the hardware store for the fashion business. Like, you want underwires, we got you. You want a roll of muslin, we got that. Oh, you want to have your buttons covered with the fabric you're doing? Well, you come on certain days and Judy's at the front and she'll put the buttons together for you, these really special buttons, or she'll put the grommets in your jeans, but they're great. They're great. And I like I like Pacific trimming as well. And I like Sill thread. I end up going, my favorite store, a couple of my favorite fabric shops, unfortunately, didn't survive COVID. But I end up going through my list. And before I take every client, I call ahead to see what is still open, because they come and go. They come and go. I think one of the smartest things Mood did was put their business on floors that were not on the ground floor, because I'm sure the rent has to be cheaper. And the garment center has been overtaken by banks who will pay a boatload for rent. So, and I will build a great relationship with one, and then I will go back in and they're gone. And then I'll build a great relationship with another, and I'll go back in, and they've changed hands, and so it's time to start all over again. And so it's a constant flipping of stores. So I have, for my students, I have a list that I have on Google Drive that I'm constantly updating, so that it's as recent as possible for stores that they can go to get materials and supplies. And like, there's a company in England on it that you can send small bits of fabric if you want to have them custom pleated. There are companies in Manhattan that will do custom embroidery. You can go get custom flowers made, all kinds of neat things that you wouldn't even think about.
Have you found any trustworthy online fabric?
Yeah, what I always recommend to my students is you only go to the stores online that will send you swatches. And you often have to pay for the swatches, but you can't know how a fabric is going to behave from looking at a picture. I know there's a great shop, Fabric Warehouse Direct, I think it's called. And I think they're in Long Island. And they have great videos where they hold the fabric up and they show you how it drapes. And that's wonderful. You still got to get a swatch, because it's and they do a lot of real basic things at a very reasonable price. So we often go there for linings and basic shirtings and things like that. Mood has a very good service online. I have to go look at my list. There's fabric.com used to exist, and it shut down, didn't make it even nationwide. The sort of middle of the road or lower end, Joanne Fabrics just closed May 31st. It's gone. So it's back to mom and pop shops. It's back to ordering from, different spots. And there's also a lot of companies across the country now, little fabric stores that take their end lots from designers and they will sell them. So you might be able to get some Oscar de la Renta fabric, or you might be able to get, it depends on the designer, and they have each designer has different rules. I go to a shop called Banksville Fabrics up in Norwalk, Connecticut, that is fantastic. And there are a few designers in New York that only sell there because they don't want to see their fabrics walking down the street in New York. But they'll sell these gorgeous silk prints in Norwalk, Connecticut, which is a great shop, Banksville Fabrics.
Got it.
It's great.
You hear that, listeners?
Hear that?
So you did a lot of international travel. I want to kind of pick your brain on maybe some sort of customs, business customs that you thought were different or strange.
I don't know if any of them were strange, but there was definitely customs. So in Asia, generally all the spots that I visited, when you would give a business card, you face the business card towards the person, you give it with two hands, always. And then when you get theirs, you always have their business cards in front of you. And so whatever the order was that they were seated, that's what the order of the business cards would be. And you don't take it and put it in your wallet. That's considered disrespectful. So you don't do that. It was interesting when I first started working in China because I was very young. I was in my mid-20s and I looked like I was 16. And so it was an interesting experience, A, because I was a woman and I was a very young woman and I was running the show. My first time I went across, my boss came with me, and then I was sort of let loose. And, he gave me enough rope to either hang or swing by. And we swung, it was great. And the best thing I ever did for business, which isn't a custom, but I was open to trying any food. And that opened more doors for me than anything else. And I tried all the weird foods. You want to take me for street food? No problem. I will eat whatever you put in front of me. I've had baby scorpions fried on a stick. They were like soft shell crab. Um, I have had in the Philippines, I've had isao, which is a stuffed chicken intestine that's on a stick and grilled. And I've tried everything. I don't care. I'll try it. I'll try it at least twice. I'd say once, but then you go to a city and you find out that's their specialty, and you're like, oh, if I'm gonna try it, I better try it here. I mean, this is what they do. So yeah, so I had always loved the food. I always have loved the food. But that was the number one thing, which I can tell you, whether it was for business or pleasure, saying yes to trying foods really truly opened the most doors for me of anything ever. And I met some of the most interesting people doing that, and many I still keep in touch with. And it was almost always over food or music, but usually it was food first and then music.
Absolutely. Food is the psychology of like sharing food builds trust. It's like bonding, creates a sense of community. Absolutely. And music's magical. I talk about that all the time.
Everything, try anything. I don't care if from a Western palate you think, ugh, try it, because you never know.
So what happened at Betmar? I know I was still living in New York when that all transpired.
The parent company sort of retooled Betmar. I was basically told, I was called in Hong Kong and told that my boss would be retiring. And then upon hearing that, they said, your position will be changing. We're getting rid of your position. You'll be allowed to apply for another position. The only positions that were remaining were far junior. And I basically walked in on a Friday and they were like, oh, by the way, today's your last day. And I looked at them and I said, well, what do you want me to do with the collection that I am almost done with, that you're presenting to your salespeople in 3 weeks? And they were like, you've been working? And I'm like, yeah, that's what I do. I mean, if I suddenly stopped designing things to produce for this company, there would be tens of thousands of people around the world that would suddenly be out of a job, because we were that big of a resource for these manufacturers. We made that much. And I'm not going to screw them. They've been fabulous to me over the years. And so they were sort of shocked. And they were like, oh, we didn't put that. I said, would you like me to just round everything out and bring it on Monday? And they said, oh, no, Monday's not a good day. Your replacement is coming. It's, thank you for that. Okay. So I was allowed to come in the next Wednesday to hand everything off. And then within a week, the phone started ringing. How did you do this? Where would we find that? how did you manage doing this on your own? It's taken 4 people for us to cover your job. And, it was all based around one employee who had made these decisions that it would be the best thing. And that employee didn't last very, very many more years. So it was sort of I think they picked apart at it, and then it just never really continued. It never got back to where it was. I mean, when I joined the company, they were doing 3 million. And when I left, they were doing 16 million. And that's a big jump for hats, And when I was done, I looked back and, I know they lost quite a bit of market share over the years. And it's a hard business to be in now. Very hard business to be in, but it was a unceremonious ending for one of the best jobs I've ever had in my life. It was sort of shocking, but you got to roll. You got to figure out and reinvent and figure out what's next.
Such a bullshit way to go. That's awful. The loyalty you had to that company. I would have lit that collection on fire in front of them. No, I wouldn't have. You made samples in the factories. That's unheard of. You also taught sex education. Talk to me about that.
So, one of the big problems that we were encountering was Chinese New Year. Everybody go home. And they usually had about 3 weeks off because it could take a week to get home by train. China's huge. They weren't popping down to the local airport to fly home. That's not the average worker's method of transport. Within a couple of months, all of a sudden, there would be a lot of young women pregnant. And they didn't know how they got pregnant, which as a Westerner sounds funny. Like, what do you mean? Well, if you don't have sex ed and you're never, and it's sort of taboo to talk about sex, how do you know how you get pregnant? You don't. And we started realizing that not only were we losing really good workers, that it was, from a business perspective, it was a cost thing because we trained all these people, and training is very expensive. It takes a lot of time to get somebody up. But from a human perspective, when I would see these young women and then hear their stories. So in those days, if you became pregnant and you went to your partner, who was the father, and they said, oh, no, that's not mine, the woman would be ostracized. Her family would probably disown her. We had young women who didn't know what to do because they had been shunned because of this. And we realized, it was a big problem. And so I was sitting with my friend who ran the factory. We'd become good friends over the years. And I said, there's got to be something we can do about this. There's got to be some education. So I went home, and she and I had many emails, and I went to Planned Parenthood, and I got posters and different things that I brought with me, which was illegal to transport those. That was considered pornography. And I was, transporting it across country lines into China. I'm like, please don't stop and check my bag. Please don't stop. And I stood in a room, and we'd alerted everybody that this crazy American girl was going to be doing this talk about sex. On my left, there was a gentleman who was translating it into Cantonese, and on my right, there was a gentleman translating it into Mandarin. And we put out, 10 chairs, and they started pouring in. And it was a large room. They got every bucket they could flip over and sit on. They got every chair in the factory. It was standing room only. It was truly unbelievable. I'd been going there for enough years, and I was always friendly with everybody. And I was working in the factory, so I wasn't a face that they hadn't seen before. But you could see a lot of them were very nervous. And it kicked off with one of the women in the front row who spoke some English. She worked in one of the offices, and she was very pregnant. And she said, as you know, I can have one child. How do I not get pregnant again? I don't know how I got pregnant in the first place. And so we started to discuss it. And, I had posters, and I explained how it happens. And there was mouths popping open in shock all around the room. Some people truly thought you got pregnant from kissing. The stories that people had been told that had been gone through years, from when you were children, were very inaccurate, to say the least. And so we talked about anything, and they could ask any questions. And I remember at the end, we had discussed, I had brought up the idea of women carrying their own condoms, and the look of distaste on so many men's faces in that room, like, that is taboo. That, only whores do that. Women don't do that. And so I said, okay, so let's say you're with your girl. Tonight's the night. You had a condom that's been in your wallet that you keep on the windowsill, and we've already discussed how they break down, and that that's not a valid anti-pregnancy device any longer, right? But she's got one in her purse. Is she a whore, or is she prepared so that you guys can have some intimacy? All of a sudden, those faces were totally different, and they were like, huh. The factory went out and started providing condoms, and the next year we lost 35% fewer workers due to pregnancy.
Oh, yeah, you changed some women's lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And hopefully they then shared with their friends, like, I know you've been told this, but that is wrong. Let me tell you what the real story is.
What are you up to now? You've got your master's degree?
Yeah, I got my master's at 2018, 2019. I went to Rutgers, and I got a master's in adult and continuing education and education technology. A couple years later, the first semester of my master's, Friday of spring break, I was a pedestrian crossing the street, and I was hit by a school bus, which was life-changing. I spent the next 4 years, I had almost 500 OT and PT and spinal surgery and knee surgery and all these things. Still did my master's degree. I was getting a scholarship, so I couldn't take any time off. So I got a 4.0. I'm very proud of that.
Woo! Go girl.
But it was the beginning, and by the time I was laid up for quite some time. I had such amazing assistance. I had great friends, great family, like, people came out of the woodwork. And when you're in that situation, you often think, like, I need my independence. I need to still be able to do things. And then you realize you can't. You realize you have to say yes. Yes, I need help. And then you see the look on the faces of the people who all they want to do is help you in one way because they feel helpless. There's nothing they can do. And you realize, like, the best thing you can do is say, yes, I need your help. It would be super helpful. On your way home from work, could you get me a gallon of milk and swing it by? Because I can't drive right now. And they would bend over backwards. They'd be like, of course, you need anything else? I'm like, just that. But it took time to be able to relinquish some of my independence because I needed help, and I learned a lot of lessons in this time. And I was laid up, not really able to move. I had just had spinal surgery. I had one of those tall neck braces on my neck for 4 months. Couldn't drive, couldn't do anything. My mom was staying with me. And I remember thinking how lucky I was that I had all of this help, all of these people that cared. And I had to figure out what was next in my life, and I wanted to be of service to others. Like, that was what was going to make me happy, because I had so many people that were doing that for me, and I needed to find a way to give back on a grand scale. So I had just finished my master's. COVID came and went. It was the ends of COVID, and in 1 week, I had 3 different people, my therapist, my boyfriend, and a friend, asked me if I had ever considered coaching. And so I ended up going to Rutgers again through an organization called LCOP. And it's a ICF program. So it's IFC program, International Federation of Coaching. I had found that so many of my clients also have ADHD. So I have been gaining more certifications in that so that I can help folks with their ADHD and proceed with anything that they need from a coaching perspective. I do a lot of executives. I mean, it is executive leadership coaching, but over the years, a lot of word of mouth has come through, and I actually have ended up coaching a lot of artists internationally again. So I have, again, word of mouth has been really great for me. Message from somebody the other day that I was coaching. They were in the Philippines. They ended up moving to Canada, and they wanted to shift gears and totally change their life. And I hadn't heard from her in a while. And she said, I just want you to know what you do is very special because it worked. I changed my life. And, you know, we did all of these things, and I wouldn't have had the gumption to do it had we not gone through the process that we did. So it makes me feel good that I can help others. I think when they start to say, well, you know, you have this easy life. And I go, no. You don't know. Don't ever judge somebody because you don't know what they've been through. And we start talking about, you know, different things that can happen in life. And they start to look at things a little differently and a little less for me and a little more of, all right, how am I going to change this? Because I had two choices. I could give up. They said I would likely never walk without a limp again. I walk just fine now. I have a traumatic brain injury that I will always have. I have double vision if I take my glasses off. There's two of you. You're both beautiful. It's and the double vision is from the brain. It's not from my eyes. My eyes are fine. I sometimes have some word remembering issues still. There was a period of time, 18 months, I went through cognitive behavioral therapy because I would have an idea in my head, but I couldn't get it out of my mouth. And I remember one night I was asking my other half if he could get in that drawer and get the thing that we eat with, that's silver, that has the 3 tines. And he's like, a fork? And I'm like, fork. I can't think of that word, you know? And it was so frustrating. I have a neck and back full of metal.
Ooh.
I'm becoming bionic, baby. Just wait. But, you know, I've always been more of an optimist, which I think only helped in that situation. And I knew that I wanted to just roll ahead and help where I could. So coaching, I help. And then I also teach at a university and a college. At the college, I teach in a fashion school. It's a community college. It's called the Bergen Community College. It's in Bergen County in New Jersey. Highly recommend the fashion program. We have a very special reciprocal agreement with F.I.T, which is kind of unheard of, wherein you come and take our 2-year program, get your associates, and you roll into F.I.T as a junior. I teach pattern making. I teach pattern 1, draping 1, sometimes sewing 1, sewing 2, and then there's another professor that does all the 2s. They do the draping 2 and the pattern 2, and then I get them back. And I get them for capstone. And capstone is they have to create 3 collections, 50 drawings each to start with. And we boil it down to 8 drawings in each collection and then pick one collection, and they make 2 full garment looks from that collection that go down the runway.
That must be so fun. The creativity must just be rocking from those students.
It is. And we just had ours in May. It's usually a week or 2 after school is over. So these folks have actually already graduated. They graduated 2 weeks before. And then we have the runway. It's really, truly amazing to see exactly what was on the drawing, where they look at me and say, I don't think we can do this. There's no way I can make this. And I go, oh, we can make this. Oh, yeah. Oh, don't you worry about it. Oh, yeah, I'm gonna knock this right out. And then they see it on the runway and they look and they're like, you said we could do it. I couldn't believe we could do it. Look what I did. And I'm like, look what you did, right? Like, this is amazing. It's inspirational for me to see all this creativity. Being surrounded by this creativity is a joy.
I know F.I.T in New York is, you know, it's, if you want to go into fashion, darling, that's where you need to go to school. What practical sort of job are you going to get after graduating?
Well, the program that I teach through, we have reciprocal agreements with 2 programs at F.I.T. So the one program is fabric styling, which is basically styling and marketing. So that's the field that they would get out into. And the other is technical design. So it's truly for somebody who is a pattern maker, who is, you could get a job designing, and then you have to know enough when you're doing the fittings and when you have your samples come in and you have a person in them and you're doing fittings. If you don't understand the design and the pattern drafting, you're never going to be able to make the correct corrections. You could also
Right.
be, I mean, I have students who are psyched, they're going to be pattern makers. That's what they want to do. And they are so skilled. We give them the basis for true pattern drafting. And then when they get to F.I.T, they can translate that into a lot of the digital work, the digital pattern drafting, which you still need to know the hard skills before you do that. You have to understand how
Right.
these go together.
Yeah, the foundation.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, I find the joy in making sure they have such a super foundation. Start their own collection if they wanted to, although I always recommend take some time, work for other people, make mistakes on somebody else's dime, keep your ears peeled, because when you're brand new out in the business, people say things around you all the time, and you will learn so much by watching what companies do wrong so you don't make the same mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And the connections too.
Connections don't burn any bridges. Do not burn any bridges. Business is tiny. The industry is so small.
Kimberli, it's wonderful. It's wonderful that you reinvented yourself and you've found meaning. And I know you are a fiercely independent woman, and I'm sure that tragic accident you had, was very difficult for you to accept help.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't realize how independent you are until suddenly you can't move. Until you can't get into the shower by yourself and you need someone to help you in. Until, you come out of surgery and, you're told, by the way, we just reminding you, you can't drive for the next 4 months at all. It's illegal, But the most incredible thing I think that happens through those 4 months was having my mom come stay. She'd retired. I mean, at what point in life do you get 4 months to spend with a parent as an adult? And, I've always loved her, but we really like each other. Like, that's what we found out. I like who she is as a person. She liked who I was as a person. We had a ball, So if I had to be laid up, at least that was a great gimme that I got that was really unexpected.
Oh, I love that. Oh, relationships, especially with our family, and our health, very important. I ask all my guests the same question, Kimberli. What music are you listening to? What's moving you? What's your jam?
Lately, I was just looking today through my Spotify list of what I've listened to most. There was a guy that I was walking through Central Park last summer. His name is Jules Avalon, and I really like his stuff. I found him on Spotify, and the song "I Don't Want Your Money" I really like. I really enjoy. Do you know Scott Bradley's Postmodern Jukebox?
No.
Oh, I love them. They take songs and they put them back into a feel of like the 1930s and 40s with horns. They have multiple singers. When you see them, if you ever have a chance to see them in concert, they're fantastic. I love their version of Creep.
Oh,
It's really good. It's Scott Bradley's Postmodern Jukebox. Listen to it. It's fabulous. I love when I went to see them in concert, and all of a sudden they're playing something, and you saw around the audience as people realized what it was, and it was Michael Jackson's Thriller, done in this style, right? It's so cool. It started in Brooklyn. It was a great band that started in Brooklyn, and I sometimes think I was born in the wrong era because I love that style of music. But I love that you'll be listening to something and you're like, I know this song, and then you're like, oh my God, this is Britney Spears. Like,
I can hear the birds tweeting about in the background. I just want to say thank you so much, Kimberli, for sharing your story. You are an inspiration, and you always look at the positive side of things.
oh, thanks, Lucy. You're amazing. I love this.
Love you. I haven't seen you in ages. I would love to come and see you. That looks so idyllic. Look at that water. Oh, lovely. And congrats on the marriage. And I'm so happy you're loved up. Mwah.
Love you. I have to see you in person soon.
This is no